Welcome to All In for Estacada Schools. Joined by School Superintendent Ryan Carpenter, we'll be taking an in-depth look into the work, the data, the wins, and the fun that's happening every day in the Estacada School District.
Hey, thank you very much, and thanks for joining us this week as we dive deeper into the Estacada School District. My name is Ryan Carpenter, and I serve as your superintendent. Very excited about our podcast today as we talk a little bit about standards-based grading and being able to interpret your report card, and I have some experts to help with that today. We're also going to be looking deep into my inbox and playing fact or fiction again with social media posts.
What was your favorite win this school year?
I would say my favorite win of this school year was watching our seniors graduate last Saturday at the Estacada High School graduation. What a tremendous feat that really just culminated all of the hard work of our great employees and our systems that we executed together, K through 12. Every teacher had a role in watching these kids walk across the stage, and I'm just so thankful for that. I also just want to praise our high school principal, Amy Hudson. This is her first year at Estacada High School, and she's just done tremendous work. I would say those were my two biggest wins this year. And I look forward to collecting some more of those wins through the summertime as we plan for next year as well. Hey, so as we get into our podcast today, I really want to talk a lot about standards-based grading. And thanks again for joining me. Today we are with Scott Sullivan, our school district's director of teaching and learning. Scott, say hi, introduce yourself, and what was your favorite win this year?
Well, thank you, Mr. Carpenter, and thank you for inviting me onto my very first podcast. My favorite win this year, I would have to agree with you about graduation, but really I want to just commend everybody in the community who have overcome all the obstacles that 2020-21 has brought to us. Fires, freezing, pandemic, everything. And we did our best. And I honestly think we did some of the best work in the country of trying to have some learning taking place with our students. And that's what I'm most proud of.
Very cool. It really is a pretty neat experience. And Estacada is such an incredible community. How many years have you been an educator in this community?
I think this is my 26th year, finishing my 26th year.
That's pretty impressive. And you've been able to see it just grow and evolve throughout those 26 years. Is there any favorite things that you've seen in the last 26 years of Estacada school history?
Well, being the principal of Estacada High School is probably the highlight. No offense to working at the central office, but being able to work with students has always been my passion. I know I still have a way to make connections and talk with students, but being there, working and supporting our kids, that's my fondest memories of education so far.
Very cool. And that's so awesome. Scott, one of the things that we need to talk about today is standards-based grading. And really, standards-based grading has been installed in our school district for now almost a decade. In fact, it began under your leadership as principal of Estacada High School. And I was a teacher at that time at Estacada High School. And I remember the teachers and union leadership working in collaboration with the district on the implementation of standards-based grading. But, even though we've been doing this for a long time, it's always important to revisit our why and why the Estacada School District uses standards-based grading. But also, I'm a parent of three children who attend the Estacada School District, and I have to look at this report card every single year and try to identify what is it that I'm looking at, and how do I have a conversation with my child about a standards-based grading report card. So share with our community a little bit today, Scott, about why we do standards-based grading and how I can have a conversation with my child from the report card that I see.
Well, thank you. I won't go into a lot of detail about the history of this, but I would like to share that there was a group of people at the Estacada High School, teachers, One of those being our Estacada Education Association president, Steve Christensen. We had some others, Mr. Bosch Seforus, Kevin Kirchhoffer, large number of teachers that were part of the building leadership team. And we started to study what good assessment is, what good practices are for students, and how do we focus on learning. And the traditional grading system did not really have a focus on learning. I remember going to conferences and having a parent tell me, well, my child just got moved from a B plus to an A because they got bonus points because I showed up to conferences. And grades were so much about behavior and things that had nothing to do with understanding and knowing English 9 or algebra or reading or science. It had to do with being able to play the game of school. And that's important. We don't want to ignore the game of school and all of the things that you need to do to be successful in school, which will carry on into your lifetime. But we wanted to focus on learning because we were pretty stagnant in our state assessment scores at that time. We were well below the state in almost everything. And we wanted to figure out how could we focus on learning. And that's how we got into the standards-based learning and reporting system, because we wanted to ensure that we were focusing on student learning. And how better to do that than to take what we expect to teach a student in a year, break that down into subtopics, which we call essential learning standards, and teach and make sure that our kids reach those essential learning standards at a minimum of a 3 or a proficiency level, so that we can continue teaching and learning and not just covering material. Too often, historically, we covered the material, and there's a great cartoon where they're saying, I taught my dog to whistle. And the other guy says, I don't hear your dog whistling. And he says, well, I told you I taught my dog to whistle. I didn't say they learned how to whistle. And we had too much of that going on in our community, and we wanted to really focus on the outcomes. As a result, this large committee at the Estacada High School decided it was time to jump all in, and we did. And it's been a rough, challenging time. We didn't always know exactly what we were getting ourselves into. And one of the keys to all of this, as we all know, is that we must focus on continuous improvement, collecting data, making adjustments based on that data, and the system will continue to get better. And it has, and it will.
And that has definitely been our journey. And we've learned by doing. We've communicated and worked very hard with our community and our educators to better define what standards-based means for the Estacada School District. Okay, so now I understand what's going on. I believe in standards-based grading. So now I have this report card. Talk to me a little bit about what this looks like and how can I better understand? I've got a lot of different moving pieces on my report card. I'm used to just seeing A's, B's, is respectful to others. Like, tell me a little bit more about this report card I'm looking at.
Great timing, Mr. Carpenter. I was just answering the same question to a group of administrators from Oregon City School District and a few other school districts in our county as they are trying to follow in our footsteps and bring more standards-based reporting and grading into their secondary schools. Many districts in our area have been doing this at the K-5 level for a while, and that's where we started in our report card work. But now I get this report card. And one of the first things you're going to see is what our academic performance descriptors are. And we basically have a 4-point scale, 4 meaning that the student exceeds grade level standards in a particular standard. What we're doing is not giving an overall grade for English. We're saying this equals cause and effect. This is reading at grade level. This is how to write a topic sentence. We're breaking it down on the essential standards, and we're trying to identify, is this student exceeding grade level expectations? Are they meeting grade level expectations? Are they working towards or progressing towards meeting those standards? And our number 1 is not yet making progress toward grade level standards. Also on a report card, you may see an NA. That would indicate that that particular standard was not assessed for this term. And you'll also see that M stands for the standard has been assessed, but there's not enough data or evidence to make a determination on the level of proficiency that student has. So first is important to identify those descriptors. In addition, there's one other thing on there, a key that talks about our characteristics of a successful learner. And you will see this on our K-8 report cards. And in the future, we hope also on our high school report cards. They will sound different at each grade level, look a little bit different. But one of the fallacies about standards-based grading is we don't care about work ethic, work habits, getting work completed, getting it done on time. We care an awful lot about that. The distinction is we want to grade those or report those separately. We have an academic grade. What does a student know about reading, writing, and math? And we have a behavior grade, if you want to call it that, or a characteristics grade that talks about what the student can do or is doing in terms of behaviors. So those are the two big pieces you'll want to look at the report card and make sure you understand those. If you don't, feel free to give us a call, email, or talk to your principal or your child's teacher.
So now, Scott, as I look at my child's report card, I see in English class that there are 8 or 9 different numbers there. And in 8 of those numbers, I see that they either have a 4 or a 3. And in one of those numbers, I see a 1 or a 2. However, I see that my child really did pretty well in that class, but yet they have an incomplete or are failing. Can you talk to me a little bit more about how I can read that to know best? And are we averaging this at the school district?
No, you're referring to a high school report card, I believe, at this time.
Yes.
Our K-8 schools do not give an overall A, B, C, D, or an incomplete. And that is a trend also that is being widely accepted throughout the country. What you see at the high school is you will see every essential learning standard, you'll receive a 1, 2, 3, or a 4. But for now, we are trying to also put an overall grade. So the high school has not necessarily a formula, but they have a way to take the accumulation of all of those standards and turn it into an A, B, or C for the purposes of putting it on the transcript so they can send it off to colleges.
Good. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Well, let me go back though. You did talk about why is my son or daughter getting an incomplete if they've done really well, but they got a couple of things missing.
Yeah.
One of the things we are trying to make sure that we do is ensure that students don't give up on themselves. One of our favorite quotes is, "Don't give up on those who have given up on themselves." Our youth are too young to make the mental or the mature decision that I am done learning and I can stop today. We don't want to allow them to stop. So just because they didn't reach standards doesn't mean we're not done working with them and trying to help them reach those standards. So we're going to give them a child who earns an incomplete. What we're really saying is you have hope. There's hope to continue to earn that credit, to pass that class. You don't have to take the whole class over. We need to focus on what's missing, and we'll get you there.
Last question for you, Scott, is how does standards-based grading help us, especially during this pandemic when, a lot of the country is talking about learning lost during the school year? How can standards-based grading help our school district to make sure that my child is successful next year?
Well, the best thing that we have going for us, and parents especially, is that you have a report card that indicates all of the essential standards. Those standards were identified by our professional learning communities, group of teachers who teach that content or that grade level, and they're asked to identify the most important, the key critical things in all of the standards that are given to us from the state. They're to identify what they deem the most important for students to successfully complete in order to be successful and have a chance in the following school year. So that's how those are identified. And once those are identified, we report on those. And so we know all the subtitles of what a student may have missed. Again, we don't have to take the class all over again. We just need to identify how to count to 10 by ones for a kindergartner and not everything.
Very good. So the Estacada School District then knows skill by skill, kid by kid, as we exit this school year and prepare our teachers to teach their children next year.
We definitely know what our students are strong in and what they're needing help in, as opposed to an overall grade that won't really tell us a whole lot.
That sure makes me feel a whole lot better as a parent. But also, I just want to thank you again, Scott, for joining us. You're our first guest on the All In for Estacada Schools podcast. And so it's such a pleasure to have you, as well as to be able to just communicate with our families the why behind standards-based grading and how better to interpret your report card so that you can have a great conversation with your child as well. Now, Scott, we believe in the Estacada School District in quality service. If I have more questions or if I want to know more about standards-based grading, what are the protocols that I need to take and how can I maybe get in touch with you?
Always, it would be great if you could communicate with your teacher first, because they know your child and they know everything that's going on with them. And then chain of command would be the principal. But at any time, if you have questions, concerns, or just want to debate the topic of anything that we do here in our schools, please reach out to me. You could find my phone number. It's extension 2920, and my email address is on the website. Love to hear from you.
Thank you. We're joined today by our Director of Teaching and Learning, Scott Sullivan. Thanks again, Scott, for joining us on today's podcast.
Thank you very much.
What's in Ryan's inbox?
Hey, so in this segment, again, we take a look at the number one theme in my inbox, the superintendent's email inbox. I wanted to continue to communicate the data. This last week, I averaged 221 emails this week. The number one theme inside that email inbox was still critical race theory. And I just want to thank all of our community members and families who continue to ask such great questions about critical race theory, as well as what their children are exposed to both in curriculum and in the classrooms on a daily basis in the Estacada School District. I can tell that I'm going to continue to have to address this and speak about critical race theory as it continues to gain traction in a national narrative throughout most national news organizations. I do just want to state three specific things. First of all, that the Estacada School District's mission statement is to equip every student with the knowledge and skills necessary to be resourceful and successful. I want to point out that critical race theory is not embedded in any of our mission statements. Our vision is by the year 2030 to be considered a premier school district within the state of Oregon. Again, critical race theory is not a part of that mission or vision. And as we talk about our values, which is to inspire, engage, and achieve, we're doing all within our power to make sure that we're executing the mission, vision, and values, which were ultimately created by the Estacada School District community, none of which explicitly states that critical race theory is a core value and or backbone of how we offer education and instruction to its community's children. So I just want to reiterate that inside the Estacada School District, there is no adopted critical race theory curriculum that is currently being taught. And at this point, in order to engage in that curriculum, like we talked about in last week's podcast, there is a very robust process in how curriculum is selected. And that requires community, employees, the district, and ultimately the school board. And at this point, there is no curriculum that contains critical race theory that is embedded in any of those processes, both currently and actively occurring on the Estacada School District campus or with plans to implement as well. I look forward to having more communications, but that is the number one theme in my inbox this week. I hope this is helpful.
Fact.
Or fiction?
It's time for, I think, what's going to be my most favorite segment in this podcast, and that is fact or fiction. Today, we went on to social media to take a look at what is trending out there and confirming in terms of what's going on in the school district if those posts are in fact or if those posts are fiction. So here we go. Without further ado, drum roll, please. This post. I didn't know that critical race theory was being taught here in Estacada. It's time to call out school board members and district Marxists. While I appreciate the boldness and straightforwardness in this post, I am here to tell you that that post is fiction. As I told you in the email themes response, critical race theory is not currently being taught intentionally or approved through any type of curriculum that's out there. I also want to point out that our school board members are a fantastic blend of political views, experiences, and have various different roles inside our community. Our school board also prioritizes reflecting the views of the constituency that they represent. Now, the Estacada constituency, in large, through my emails and through what I'm seeing on social media, is opposed to critical race theory inside our schools. I can tell you with certainty that there is no approved curriculum being taught in any classrooms, K through 12, that involve critical race theory. There is nothing on our docket to approve or to begin teaching critical race theory in our curriculum processes, and our school board to date, whom you've elected, have not approved of or will not be approving in any near future any type of curriculum that involves critical race theory. So the school board portion of this is false, as well as what's being taught in classrooms is fiction as well. Now, I do want to point out that discussions on race will come up in our social studies classes as we teach about the Civil War, the civil rights movements, and the more we work hard to keep the focus on standards and allowing our students to develop their own critical thinking skills while keeping our staff opinions out of the classroom. It's our adults' responsibility to lead, guide, and facilitate student discourse. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to build is critical thinking skills for your child to be able to form their own opinion and support that with evidence. It's also important as a parent, and again, I'm a parent of 3 children inside this school district as well, it's important that conversations continue at home. So as your kid may be exposed to different adverse situations inside the school, that there's a safe place for them to talk about it, ask questions at home, which then gives you the opportunity to reflect your own family's values and how you and your family would like to respond to said circumstances. So these diverse views are evident in the way that we make decisions. Our school board member represents our Eagle Creek community, our George community, our City of Estacada community, the Springwater Redland community, and all of them are deeply connected to the values of the Estacada community. The Estacada School District's strategic plan, its mission, vision, and values also represent the Estacada community. So I can say with certainty that the critical race theory is not currently being taught in the Estacada School District, nor are there any short-term plans to implement that theory into our curriculum thinking. So if you see posts on social media that says that this is in fact occurring, you can count that as fiction. However, if there's evidence out there, I sure would love to see it so that we can address those pieces on an individual basis. But to this point, I'm seeing a lot of talk about how it's in Estacada with very little evidence that it's there. Therefore, this post is fiction. I just want to thank everybody again to tuning into our second podcast. This is something we're going to continue to improve as we get better at this and as we collect the feedback from our community. At the end of the day, This podcast is designed to dig deeper into our Super 60 Seconds and allow our families to have a better understanding of the hot topic decisions and the big decisions that we're making that affect your school district. I'm Ryan Carpenter. I proudly serve as your superintendent, and please tune in to next week's All In for Estacada Schools.